Big news on Locked On Nuggets. We have a massive free agent addition. We'll tell you who and what that means for the show. Plus, is this season going to be more or less interesting than the championship season? And we're going to give you one big prediction for the upcoming Nuggets season. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. We appreciate you guys making us a part of your day on whatever platform that you've chosen, whether you're on YouTube or you can join a live version of the show. Just turn on notifications. Smash that like button for us. Helps us out so much. We really appreciate you guys being with us. Or if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure to give us those 5-star reviews. Appreciate you guys being along for the ride. Hope you're having yourselves a great week. We appreciate you guys being an everydayer. I'll let you know today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Adam Mares. He's director of content for DNVR. You can check out the pre- and post-game shows before every Nuggets game, as well as Nuggets shows on the daily, as well as great coverage of great football teams like the Colorado Buffaloes, who that was an awesome game.
Matt, you don't have to do this, man. You don't have to do this. I know what you're doing.
It was an awesome game on Saturday. That game was amazing. That game was absolutely riveting. I was very I was sad for whoever was going to lose that game. It was really awesome.
Yeah. It was
Adam, how's your weekend?
My weekend is good, man. I love that you're just stringing this out.
Making the folks in the chat segment wait for it.
But in all sincerity, I just some behind the scenes. You guys know this from following me and Matt. We love doing this show. We love the conversations we have where we agree, where we disagree, where we debate, where we do all of this. You also know that Matt and I both do a lot of things, both with Locked On and with other outlets. And last year, probably our worst year ever at getting you 5 shows a week. I know you guys deserve them. I think we did a great job of getting you 3-4 shows a week. And they were great shows whenever we did, but we want to be able to bring the show to you 5 times a week. We want to be able to make sure that you're getting something, all that you're paying for, tuning into us. And we had somebody in mind that we just thought was going to take this show, make it consistent, but also bring a completely different voice and perspective that I think is going to pair really well in a bunch of different configurations. So that's kind of the behind the scenes. And by the way, starting today, back to 5 times a week.
5 shows a week going forward all the way through the next offseason. You guys, 5 days a week. And count on that. We're locked in for it. We're excited to be back with you for another season. Want to let you know, there's a lot of questions in the comments about it. Neither Adam and I are going anywhere. We're both going to be on the show. We're both going to be on the show multiple times a week. You're going to get your Adam fix. You're going to get whatever fix it is that you get from me. And you're going to get a healthy fix of this individual who is...
He's in there. Swipe a Cam.
Swipe a Cam has joined Locked On Nuggets. You can follow him on Twitter at Swipe a Cam. If you haven't already, what are you doing? Because he is one of the true kings of Nuggets Twitter. We're so glad to have him on board for this season. We're so glad to have him as our co-host. It's now a 3-man game. It's no longer a 2-man game. Running the triangle here on Locked On Nuggets. Swipa, welcome to the show, baby.
Look, first off, shout out to both Adam and Matt. Been a big fan for a number of years. I told them as soon as they sent the invite out that I'd be honored to do it. I love Locked On Nuggets. I've been a fan. I watch basically every one of y'all shows. So I can't wait to be a part of the team and everything that y'all do, the work that y'all do, what y'all contribute to content for the NBA and the Nuggets. I'm super thankful and appreciative. So I hope I can, fill in well. I got my Dion going on for y'all, sunglasses and hat. You know what I mean? I want to make sure I bring the tempo into the room. So, definitely excited to be here.
So what I like about this, Matt, is, you and I have different energy. Swipa has different energy. And these shows will largely be either solo shows or duo shows. I mean, we'll hop on the 3 of us from time to time, especially big moments, big games, big things happening The 3-man game will be awesome, but this will allow a lot of different configurations. Me and Swipa, me and Matt and Swipa, and then some one-off individual podcasts, probably some notebook pods and different things sprinkled in there. So I like it because it's almost like you're getting 5 shows in one.
Yeah, it should be great. It's going to be awesome, I think, in terms of the variety that we're going to be presenting to you. The regular schedule that we're going to have going forward, and there'll be weeks where we have to move things around for various engagements and so forth. But you're going to get World's Finest with me and Adam on Sunday nights. Swipe is going to be with you on most Tuesdays. I'll be with you tomorrow on Tuesday's show. Wednesdays are going to be Swipa and Adam, so you're going to get that nice combination going there, which I think will be, those shows are going to be absolutely phenomenal. Thursdays will be me solo, and then on Fridays you're going to get me and Swipa going back and forth. I'm so excited to do those shows with both of the guys. I respect these guys so much. It's going to be great, I think, for the fans. Show all sorts of angles, all sorts of sides of the team, all that kind of coverage. Excited to have you guys on board.
I love it. As somebody, Kyle Simonson says, this podcast might have a deeper bench than the actual Nuggets now, which I like. That's true. One of us on the bench most of the times, it'll be good. No, here is my question, Matt. I told you before that I had a question for you. And actually, I'll ask Swipa first, and then Matt, you could tell me what you think. Do you think, Matt, because you're a positive Nuggets guy, you're optimistic, you're more optimistic than I am, Swipa, you definitely, I think you ride even higher than I do, but I ride pretty high on the Nuggets. Is Matt going to zig, do you think, and be even more pessimistic? Do you think he's going to be super pessimistic now that he has to combat you and me?
No, see, the thing about Matt, I don't actually think Matt is as pessimistic as he appears to be. I think Matt has just gone through so many years of trials and tribulations. I think he doesn't want to get his expectations up. So I think he combats it by trying to be more pessimistic in his take.
He's up already, Matt. You hear this?
No, you know what I'm saying? I've been listening to Matt for years. So this is what I'll say. I think if Matt believes in the take, for instance, he made the argument last year that he thought Giannis should have been the MVP. We didn't actually believe that. He didn't actually believe that he was better than Jokic last year, but he just had to put it out there for the sake of the basketball take, so we understand it.
All right. I see how this is going. I see how this is going to be. That's fine.
That might make 1 week. He's going to last 1 week. Like, I'm out of here, man.
That's fine. I'm fine with this. I'm okay with this. You know what? I think I will say this is definitely going to be a season, I think, where I think it's going to be a challenge a little bit, because I think there's going to want to be the championship felt so good and was so rewarding for Nuggets fans that I think there's going to be a desire to hang on to that. And I'm always looking for whatever, truth is subjective a little bit in a lot of cases, but whatever is closest to the truth, whatever is most accurate. And I have a lot of questions and concerns. I don't think I've made that, it's hard to say that I'm going to pivot to being pessimistic, because I've been pretty nervous.
You might pivot to be optimistic, though. I mean, part of me thinks when the team does it, it's hard to conceive a team doing it. It was hard to conceive the Nuggets winning the title, but now we saw it. So it's almost easier to conceive them winning, because it's well, they'll just do what they did last year.
Right.
And now we know what that looks like.
Right. And so I just think it's going to be, and this kind of is going to lead into our second segment, I think, about, what this year is going to be like, because there was so much positivity and energy surrounding kind of making another run. And I'm going to be really curious to see how this year plays out in terms of how that feels. And I think they can make another run. That's the thing, is I am not the Nuggets are not winning the title. It's not. I am not. There will not be a point, barring injury, where I get there. No matter what happens regular season, I'll still be look, if they get in, this is still the defending champs, and they still got the best player in the series and in the world. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the energy of the season goes. But that's why I think it's going to be a great combination of the three of us, because we're going to have Adam, who vacillates between being positive but very worried about the things that he's specifically worried about, and then Swipa, and then me, who's going to be doom, doom. You get that?
Yeah.
Why don't we take a break? On the other side, we'll get into that question. Is this upcoming season going to be more or less interesting than last season? We'll do that on the other side when we return on Locked On Nuggets. First, I need to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Your Colorado Buffaloes are big dogs next weekend. You can absolutely get in and bet them as well. I went 8-3 this weekend on NFL sides and totals. It was a very good weekend for me. Teasers were very good. By the way, great.
Wait. Did you bet for the Broncos or against the Broncos?
I didn't. I immediately was like, oh, I like Washington, but then everybody was like, no, Broncos are the side. So I bet the under, and that was dead in the first half. Because they scored in the first half. So I did not bet against the Broncos at all. All I did was I teased the Jaguars, and that was like the only of the relevant games of our little panel. That was the only game that I had anything that came through on. So FanDuel Sportsbook, absolutely the best way. You're going to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app's so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, spreads, player props, over-unders. You can get your same game parlays, NBA futures, wide variety of them. Lots of good ones that you can get in there. Lots of stuff that's going to be in the market coming up. You can bet on stuff like Jamal Murray's points over. I'm predicting that's probably going to be around 23.5 is probably where that's going to land. It'll be interesting to see where he goes this season and how to bet it. We'll talk about that on a future show. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Welcome back to Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Sale Philly says every season's different. 55555-ish. Just joined. Is like, what is happening? As he just popped in the chat and is like, wait, Swipe is here? Yes, Swipe Cam is with us this season on Locked On Nuggets. I'm glad to have him with us. So let's dive into this first segment that we're going to do with Swipe. Swipe, let's start here. If we're comparing last season to this season, and the experience of watching that team come together and start off kind of slow. I will never forget Adam and I doing the Are the Nuggets in Trouble episode in early November. Their surge through the midseason, how awesome they were, the dominant play, all of that, the late season swoon. It was an interesting season even before the playoff run, but there was so much expectation around it. But in large part, it was also like by, I don't know, mid-January, it was like, oh, the Nuggets are going to be a top 3 seed. You know, they're going to be one of those names up there. They're in contention for a title, even if nobody's talking about them. I think the most interesting thing about the Nuggets last season was the conversation about the Nuggets, which everyone has kind of pointed out how absurd that's been from Wade to everybody else. So my question for you, Swipa, is this season going to be more or less interesting in terms of the story of the season for the Nuggets than last season?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it depends on what you define as interesting. I think this season is the prove that it was for real season. I think a lot of people have questions about it because they played the teams that were quote unquote in the play-in. You didn't get a chance to play against, obviously, the Celtics. You didn't get a chance to play against the Bucks. Some of these teams that people predicted going into the season were going to be your elite teams. Even through the course of the regular season, everybody said the East was stronger because they felt like the East was the strongest at the top. And nobody was going to be able to beat one of those teams that were coming out of the East. So I think it's going to be interesting because now you have a solidified Jokic. You have the bad juju of the third straight MVP season that's going to be gone. I think Jamal Murray, because he's ascended and now he's healthy. Porter is going to have a healthy offseason again for just the second time in his career. I think also, too, Aaron Gordon is solidified as like a key elite high-level role player now. And then, now like Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, what do they do with the bench? Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson, they got a lot of young guns. How are they going to be able to mesh in order to make the bench work? How do they work with the rest of the starters? I think all of this is going to be a part of the conversation. So I think it can be more interesting in the fact that the Nuggets have a chance to legitimize their last year's title run by being even better and having an even stronger run this year. Because if you imagine that by the end of the season, some of these teams that are at the top of the West, at the top of the East, they're probably going to make it through some of the tougher rounds in terms of the second round into the third round of the playoffs. So I think if you get that, plus this brand new retooled Lakers team and all these new narratives, now you got Bradley Beal with the Phoenix Suns. I think all of that's going to lend itself to, if the Nuggets are able to get it done this year, I think this is just going to add to the legacy of what the Nuggets did last year.
The first thing I want to say, because I like most of what you said there, the first thing I'm going to say is I'm giving no breath to the people that say, well, this is a prove it year. And I've already done a couple podcasts, season preview podcasts, one in particular where the host says, yeah, but they didn't really face, they didn't face the Celtics. Did they have an easy path? And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I am not giving any credence to this. I'm not.
I think I know which one. I didn't hear it, but I think I know which one this is. And we're gonna have to talk.
It's my guy Nate Duncan. I'm not say it because I don't want to like talk around him. It's my guy Nate Duncan, and he gives the Nuggets credit. I think there's, I'm not going to bash the guy too much. I was on his show, and I even pushed back on it. We went back and forth. But to me, I don't even want to acknowledge that. I don't want to acknowledge that this is the prove it year. They proved it last year.
They won the title.
They won the title. Suns beat them by 50 points the last 2 games. Lakers sweep. I don't want to hear about this. So for me, I don't even want to bring that into the universe. But I will ask this question. Was last year interesting? And I want to keep this to regular season. Guys, the playoffs was incredible. It was supremely interesting. It was very, very interesting. But the regular season last year, I'm trying to think. The first 20 games were pretty clunky. We were worried about the team. January, in February, they turned into a wrecking ball and just murdered everyone. And then they looked up and nobody was close to them in the standings. And then they kind of floated through the end. Half of the season, the first 20 games of the year and the last 10, so a little bit less than half, were actually pretty boring, relative to the expectation. So part of me looks at it and goes, I don't know if Denver's going to be super interesting this year, but I actually think it's overstated how interesting they were last year until the playoffs.
I kind of agree with you in that our thing was like, look, this is not going to get it done. Like the defense is too bad. They're not you can't be a serious contender if this is what your defense looks like. And I was on the show saying well, here's what the veterans said. The veterans were like, we're going to get it straight. Don't worry. We've got to get this fixed. It's a problem, but we're going to be home and we're going to get it fixed. They never really wanted to explicitly say we've been on the road the first 3.5 weeks of the season, because they understand that once you start making excuses, it just looks bad.
It's true.
But they were right. It was and then within 2 weeks in December, I was like, oh, okay. So they actually are just waiting to get home. And they were dominant. They were so dominant for 2 months.
And that part was really fun, by the way. Their dominant stretch was super interesting. You started to see it.
It was interesting from the context of, because I'm doing these radio shows and talking about them from a betting perspective, and talking about them from the idea of what I was trying to explain to people was, you really need to understand how many weapons they have. I don't think people really realize it, that you need Jokic to make it work. But when it is operational and you do have Jokic surrounded by this much shooting, this much athleticism, and this much size, I really don't know how anyone's going to stop them. And what I also kind of think is interesting, I think the most interesting thing about the season, honestly, other than how do they respond when they hit what's going to be, I think, the strongest bit of adversity that they faced with this team, which began last year. This is, first year. Last year was first year with KCP. I think the other interesting thing will be what's the approach? What does this look like from a repeat perspective? If you look back and you look at a lot of the teams that tried to repeat and these seasons, there isn't a pattern, because if you go back and Nate Duncan would be like, well, they're it was kind of a one-off. They kind of shot the moon here. Okay, well, the Mavericks kind of did that, but then they imploded because they didn't re-sign Tyson Chandler and Jason Kidd was gone. And the Raptors kind of did that, but then Kawhi Leonard left. Bruce Brown left, but the starting 5 is intact, and all of the big 4 are still there. So you do have this continuity, you do have this consistency, you do have this stretch over, and we've seen runs like the 2016 Warriors, who everyone was like, okay, that was a good run, but they're not going to be better this year, and then they won 73 games. And you have teams like the 2013 Heat that after they won the title, they won 25 in a row that year. At one point. They were incredible that year. So one of the things, as much as I am bearish on the Nuggets regular season chances, if I am wrong way off. They're going to be absolute. There's only, to me, 2 ways that this goes. They're at 47 wins, or they're at near 60. That, to me, Cam, is going to be
47 wins. I mean, come on, 47 wins. I think would be tough. I think 52 is the number you're looking for when you say the downside of this. 52 is a lot of wins. 47 is not a lot of wins. I mean, that's the Thunder are projected to have 47 wins.
They won 53 last year with remarkably good health.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. Good health for the Nuggets really mean.
But they also went 10-8. Didn't they also went 8-10 down the stretch of the season though?
They did. So like that's an interesting. Again, one reason this is going to be more interesting. That's an interesting question here. Is like, are they going to not have the stretches that they did at the beginning and end of the season? Are they going to be more dialed in than they were last year?
Or scheduled more even.
Yeah, well, I think too, if you remember though, even when you're talking about when they were 29th in defense, before that Memphis game when they went on that crazy run, they were basically playing as if like they hadn't played together before, and they hadn't in years. You know, Jamal, KTP, obviously Bruce Brown was on the roster, Michael Porter Jr. was back. They had never all played together since 2021 for basically an 8-game stretch. So I think what happened last year, and for me, why it was so interesting, I think the difference is this year, they had to learn about how to play together, what their strengths were, how to accentuate their strengths, and how to cover up their weaknesses. And they spent the first really 20%, 25% of the season doing that. But then once that Memphis game happened, they won, I think, 104-91. After that point, they took over the top spot in the Western Conference, and they were a juggernaut after that. And they went into the Celtics game on January 1st. I think they won 123-111 or whatever that might have been. Like, they just kept making these very impressionable wins by having this very, very high-level defense with almost perfect execution on offense. So I think, honestly, for me, I think the reason why this year could be different for me, Matt, is I think it might go the other way. I think that because they have won together, they played together, the oldest person on their core is 28 years old in AG and Jokic. I think because of everything happening all at once, I think Murray taking a step into his prime, KCP having another year, Brown having another year, Peyton Watson coming into the offense, into the defense, I actually think they actually could have a stronger start to the season. And I actually think they could be better in terms of their peak than they were last year. Now, how that equates to wins, I don't know if they hit 55 or 56. But Matt, let me ask you this even. Because for me, I feel like they play based on where they are in their schedule and based on the competition they're playing, like in terms of the level that you're going to get from them. Because we went into the playoff last year, I think a lot of us had questions. Remember, we did the Den Bender show with Ryan, and we were asking the question, like, how good were they going to be? They had just basically ended the season versus the Houston Rockets taking an L. And then they lost to the Spurs, and all of a sudden they get to the Timberwolves series, and everything is coming together. Their defense was precise, their rotations were precise. So I think some of this is, do you think that because they have a renewed sense of energy and purpose and they know how to play together, that now they're going to have a different expectation from the team starting the year off?
Yeah, I don't know, because I think that there is kind of the idea of the championship hangover and the fact of, I think, wanting to manage that a little bit, especially from the perspective of how important Nikola is to this team, right? And that's not any sort of groundbreaking information, but relative to other teams in this spot, the Nuggets are quite honestly more dependent on Nikola than a lot of other champions are on that guy.
Do you think it's going to be less this year, though?
No. I think Jamal can have an even better season and be an all-star, but I don't have any sort of way to find out, like, what's a bread and butter? Like, what are they going to go to, right? Is it going to be, like, can they really run Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray two-man game? Like, can they really run Jamal Murray, MPJ two-man game?
That's a good point. Like, Murray can have a breakout year, and yet the team is still equally as dependent on Jokic.
Yeah. I just think that that's who they're going to be, is they're going to be dependent on him. And as such, it's like, I don't know what Nikola feel. The best way I could say to describe this is, I don't know what Nikola is going to feel like he can give. Right.
Well, okay. I push back. I think we've talked about this once before. I know I've sent it over at DNVR. One way that you could be wrong about that, because I think it's certainly possible. Like, you got to wonder what Jokic wants to give in the regular season this year, how motivated, all those things. It's a long year. And I do think, by the way, that he plays in the Olympics next year. Serbia is now qualified. And I do think that some part of him will probably have to be thinking about that he's going to basically play through an entire offseason next year. So the pacing is going to be real good. But Jokic loves playing good basketball. I think he's annoyed of regular season basketball when it's bad. And I sit here and I see Aaron Gordon going out to Serbia and spending all that time with him. And I sit here and think, is Jokic and Aaron Gordon's chemistry going to be better than ever this year? At the very least, it's going to be the same. I think there's a good argument it's better. Him and Murray, better. Him and Michael Porter, I expect it to be better. Him and KCP. KCP just arrived last year. They had to build chemistry throughout the regular season. Better. So I look at that starting lineup and I think this might be, to your point, the starting lineup might mirror those Heat teams, those Warriors teams where after they got the title, they had this confidence, they had this chemistry, and everything came easy to them. And in that way, I do think that the year has a lot of potential to be even more interesting because the Nuggets might be in the same gear they are always in November, December, but that gear might just fire a little bit faster than previous years.
Aaron says that the bench is average this season, they'll win more than 53 games. The bench was bad last season. You're absolutely right. Like, if I'm evaluating, this is one of the things that's been a challenge, which is I look at all these young guys, inconsistent, and then Reggie Jackson on the bench, and I go, that's alarming. But then I'm also like, the bar was literally not 0, it was negative with Jeff around. Like, it just was. The bench was terrible. So all the bench has to do is like randomly through whatever force, just sheer effort, just has to be 0, and it's still an upgrade. My concern, though, is when I was able to get past that and I still get into the nights where they're going to miss a starter, that's where I start to see things cascading in the lineup. Like, this is a fragile lineup construction. And if any starter has to miss time, there are ramifications on the others. And like, I also remember 2 years ago with Will Barton, where, look, Will's not the caliber of the guys that are on the starting 5 now, but Will played really well a lot and hard, heavy minutes early in the season. And it very visibly took a lot out of him as the season went on. And I learned from that the same could be true for KCP or Jamal or MPJ or Aaron or Nicola. And if there are those kind of ramifications, it can kind of cascade. I think, but getting back to the core question, though, Swipa, is that I think the season will be more interesting from trying to answer all of these questions, because I think we knew what to expect from them last year. We were worried that, like, can they live up to the expectation? But if we just look at it rationally, like media day, we were like, man, this team, I was talking to Ryan Blackburn and was like, this offense might be the best we've ever seen. This might be the best offense we've ever seen. And they weren't, which to me is like, there's probably room for them to improve. But I'm really interested to see. Now I have less of an expectation of what they're going to look like, because they could be better based off of the championship experience, or they could struggle a little bit with the championship hangover.
Do you think, y'all, both Adam and Matt, do you think they would have the lows that they had last season? Do you think they will go quite to that level?
Yes. I don't know if it'll be as extended. I mean, the lows last year were really about how long they lingered. It was the end of the season. That was a low that lasted like 3-4 weeks. I don't think they'll have that, but I do think the Nuggets are probably going to have a stretch, like a 2-game stretch where we're like, my God, this team looks terrible.
I wonder about the road splits. That's the one thing that I'm kind of interested in. Can they be as good at home as they were last year, which was their kind of saving grace? Can they be better on the road, or is that who they're going to kind of be? How they manage it. You talked about managing the schedule. These are all, I think, parts of a pretty complicated question when it comes to what the season's going to be like for the Nuggets. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about predictions. It's time for us to get into prediction season, and we'll be giving out a lot of them over the next couple of weeks. We're going to start with one big prediction for the Nuggets season. We'll do that on the other side on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. If you've got a second, please go to our YouTube page, hit the subscribe and like button. If you're listening to this on whatever podcast app, give us a review. Helps us out so much. Help us climb up. Tell a friend about Locked On Nuggets.
Matt, that one's for you. Yeah. But really, I'm just going to ask the question he's alluding to. Will the MVP conversation be more or less toxic this year than it was last year?
Less. I think it'll be less.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, there's just no way it's going to get that bad.
Yeah, I mean,
what if it's toxic in a different direction? It might be toxic about Embiid.
I did 2 hours of podcast about MVP betting for buckets this week, and we got to Jokic's segment, and I openly said, like, I would not be surprised if he targets 64 games. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, he aims for it. If it's the last week of the season and he needs to play in all 3 to hit 65.
What about the new rest rule, Matt? New rest rule. I don't know if you can.
The rest rule, it's true. I think the conversation will be less. Well, let me put it this way. I think it'll be less toxic, but I think it'll also be. It might be as toxic, just in a different manner. I can definitely see a lot of toxicity from Dallas fans if it turns into Luka versus Embiid, which is unlikely, or Luka versus Jokic. I could see it getting pretty bad again. So
I don't know if an MVP conversation between 2 players in the 6th seed will be all that toxic. Personally,
well, that's part of what will make it toxic. Let's get to some predictions. Let's talk about that. One big prediction for the Nuggets season. And we left this one kind of open. I just think it's like an interesting starting point. Adam, let's start with you. Give me one big prediction for the upcoming 2023-24 Denver Nuggets.
Mine's not that big. It's actually kind of a small one. I'm a little disappointed in myself. I think Denver's going to be the number one clutch team in the NBA this year. They've been up there for most of the years. I think this year they're going to be number one with a bullet. And because if you ask, what are you confident about the Nuggets this year? It's their starting lineup, which just so happens to be their closing lineup. So I think Denver, once again, we're going to have to separate signal and noise with the Nuggets season. But the signal to me is going to be how they perform in the clutch. And I just have a feeling their numbers are going to be kind of gaudy in the clutch.
I want to give a shout out to CT3, who is the Julian Strother truther of Nuggets Twitter, who says Strother's going to have a brown like, as in Christian Brown, rookie impact in year one.
He's the guy I least expect it, so it would be pretty dope if it happened. It'd be a nice little surprise.
I wouldn't be surprised if on your clutch thing. One thing I think is interesting is how good their defense was last year in the clutch. Like that was a very big determining factor when you dug into the numbers. It was real.
And it was real, right?
Yeah.
Like now that we saw the playoffs, it's like, oh yeah, they just have to try hard to be good on defense.
Yeah. And I don't have any sort of like data background on what that looks like year over year, if your clutch defense sustains itself or not. But I think that's an interesting one of can they I keep comparing them to the Spurs, and it's just like, it is evident to me. It's natural because that's another thing it kind of feels like where no, like the vibe can be different and the roster can be a little different. And all these things can kind of change. And then like, there are these things that the Spurs always did. And it would be very Nuggets like, I think, to be like, remember that Nuggets team where they would just lock in the last 5 minutes and just erase you? It would be like they played terrible defense for 42 minutes and then absolutely clamped. I could definitely see that being part of their identity. Swipe, you got one big prediction?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before on multiple platforms. I feel like at this point, I think Jamal Murray makes one of the All-NBA teams this year.
Wow, All-NBA. Okay.
Yeah. I think for me, so I think the number I had it at was like, it's funny enough, I think I said 23 and a half or 24. I think about 6 assists to 5 rebounds. I think if he's shooting 8 threes a game, shooting 40% from 3, 41% from 3, 87% from the line. And then again, 2020, 2021, only 98 attempts though. Again, he shot 82% at the rim. I think if his numbers get back around there, up to like 76, 77 again, on volume, on drives, I just think if the Nuggets are the number one seed or fighting for number one seed, plus coming off of the finals run, I just think all of it's in front of him. I think that if he's able to be healthy, and again, Matt, we talked about this too. Those last 40 games of the year, that's basically what he did. He was averaging 23 and 7, last 40 games of the year. So if he starts with that and maintains that, and his on-off numbers are great, and then now especially what's most important for a lot of the analytics people out there, if he can have a decent on-off without Joker this year, I think that will go to helping him a lot when it comes to earning his way into that discussion as one of the top 15.
Do they move to non-positionality in All-NBA?
Yes, this year. This next year, yes.
Okay. That'll be interesting to kind of track because that might help him actually a little bit with the absence of having to add in a center there. Because I was going through the guards and I was like, okay, Steph, if he plays enough games, Dame, Shea, Luka, if they count Luka as a guard. But again, it doesn't matter for this anymore. And then
Fox,
maybe I would say like him and Jamal, I think have about the even chance. Booker, I put Book on there. So that's interesting. I'll have to kind of like think about that. Like I think it's possible. It'd be good I think it'd be very good for Jamal's spirit to make an all-star game. I think it'd be even better for Aaron Gordon's, honestly. But I think it'd be good for Denver, for Jamal, for Ryan Blackburn, for many people, for Jamal to be able to make an all-star team or an all-NBA selection. Between the two, I will always say you should get all-NBA. I think all-star is such an overrated accolade at this point.
But it is, you're right that it's an overrated accolade, but it is respect. It's
people
in the
talk
club.
about it more.
Are you in the club or not?
Yeah. People talk about it more.
Right.
It's mentioned a lot more, and I'm always like, why would you do like all NBA is so much more important? Okay.
Well, I think all NBAs can be slept on too, because I think a lot of people didn't realize Jimmy Butler made second team All NBA last year, going into the playoffs, and people were surprised that he somehow played as well as he did versus the Bucks.
There was a prediction in here that Jalen Pickett will have a game-winning shot.
Think about all the things that have to go right for that. He has to play, he has to close, and then the play has to somehow find him at the end.
Why is he in the game? Is this like a rest game for Murray?
Yeah,
that's the question I'll be asking.
It's a rest spot. So
okay.
What about this one? I just thought of while you were talking. If Murray does play, this is another one of my super bold takes I'm going to have all year. If Murray does play in the All-Star game, I think Yoke's going to have far and away his best All-Star game yet. This is still my take. I think that he will care about it once Murray's there.
It would be really
on the same team.
It would be really
on the same team. You're right. If they're on opposite teams, he won't care.
It would be really hilarious if Jokic got chosen to be captain and he started choosing all of the basketball players and the other guys started taking all the hoopers. And it was like LeBron, KD, like all of those guys. And then like Jamal and Nikola just ran 2-man game to death with like good shooters and good defenders on the wing.
If Jokic is, I'm telling you, if Jokic gets to draft, which I hope the NBA does this, man. Like I hope this is part of it. That he gets to be on that stage. If he does, he's taking Murray first. If Murray's an all-star,
yeah,
Murray would be ranked on the board, like on the big board. He'd be down towards the bottom, and Jokic will pick him first of the bench guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Jokic was named the all-star captain, then I think Murray automatically makes the team because he's the all-star captain.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Do you not have any other ones? I think I have one.
Oh, no, I have one. I'm just saying
hear it.
The Nuggets are going to win fewer than 50 games this season.
Man. So we have our answer, Swipe. At the top of this show, I asked the question. We have our answer. He's going to zig hard.
Look, I have him. Look, honestly, a lot of this is I have.
So they're going to be a 4 seed.
This is they might be tied for third.
So wait a minute. So if they're tied for third, are you saying that the Young Guns are like the Kings, like Memphis and the Suns?
I think it's going to go Memphis, Dallas, or the best team from the Pacific.
Dallas?
Yeah, I have the Mavericks really high.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this as the year goes on. I think Dallas is going to be struggling in that 6 to 10 area.
This is going to be great. This is going to be such good content. We're going to do so many shorts off of this. This is not. I am, despite Adam's protests, like this is genuine. Like I have a projection based off of where they were at last year. It's based off of half court and transition numbers, and where my power rating gets them out to. If you can project that out to a number of games, this is about where I get them out to, and that's after I gave them an upgrade. Despite losing Bruce Brown, I gave them an upgrade because I was like, they won the title. They have more chemistry. The young guys have to be better, at least in effort, than the bench was last year. I gave them an upgrade, and I still only get them to 48.5. No, 49 is where I've got them at right now.
All right.
And so
okay.
I have Memphis. I have Memphis as the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. I'm very bullish on Memphis this season, and I've been bearish on them the last 2. I honestly, a lot of this is just based off of when I look at what their season is. They had injuries last season that were more of hey, he's got some soreness, so he's going to miss some time. They managed soreness to prevent injury last season. And I will say this, like I've looked at the data. The data doesn't say that if you had a really bad season with injuries that you get way better the next season with it, or the opposite.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. It's not like, oh, you were the healthiest team in the league last season, so you have all these injuries. But if we look at like the average amount there, I do think that there's a propensity here. And with the fact that the bench is constructed the way it is, I worry about what the starting unit looks like if it's a little clunky because the young guys have to play a little bit in spot moments, or if Reggie Jackson's got to fill in for Jamal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And it's possible, but I just – here's my thought on injuries when we talk about injuries. If Jokic gets in, when we talk about an injury, it usually means like 4 weeks. I mean, if you're talking about a guy's out for the year, every team is vulnerable to a guy being out for the year. I mean, let's just throw that part aside. Regular injuries usually means a guy missed a month, right? They missed 3-4 weeks and you had to survive. If that happens to Jokic, the Nuggets are in trouble that month. If it happens to Murray, the Nuggets are going to win meaningfully fewer games. If it happens to KCP, I don't think it affects them in the regular season. It affects them in the playoffs. It affects them long term.
It probably impacts like their point differential, but their win rate probably remains stable.
Same goes for Aaron Gordon, hugely impactful player. I just think that, again, Jokic, Murray, you still got those guys. Okay, you're winning. And I think the same even goes for Michael Porter. So for me, that's where I think the injury risk really is a Murray Jokic injury risk, not all the other guys' injury risk.
I worry about Aaron. I don't know what happens. Aaron was vital with so much stuff last year.
He's great.
Like the pressure he puts on the rim, the 3-man game with him and Jamal, the back
Clearly
screens.
they're better with him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and like we all know all of those things. My thing is like I don't consider what he does replaceable. I don't know who on the bench you can slide in there and be like, yeah, he can do that.
But he helps the margins is the point. And I think over a month is a 12-game sample size.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it probably affects like 0.5 games.
Right.
And so you're talking about maybe it affects 1, maybe it affects 0, but that's not enough to drop a team down for me to that low. But let me ask you this one, because again, it's on the table, man. I'm not going to go all in saying I think this one's wrong. I think it's wrong, but it's on the table. Where would you put the odds if I told you there's three zones? 49 wins, 54 wins, 60 wins. Break up, what's the percentage you would put those three? So one is really good, really bad, and then in between. What are the odds in your mind?
I would go like, God, that's interesting. That's an interesting way to frame it, to put it into 3 buckets. I might go 35. I think it's pretty much even. 35%. Now I'll go 40%, 49. I'll go 35% of the top end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
35% for 60.
Yeah. This is the thing. This gets back to what I was talking about. If I'm wrong, it's that the Nuggets, they had injuries. They were still dominant. Yeah, no, they absolutely had to, and the young guys really struggled to integrate. They still won all these games. Yeah. Like there's a level to which they can just coast and crush.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, Matt, because I think the year that young Melo 18 is referencing, I think didn't Jokic have like a 62 win pace for cleaning the glass that 2020
when he played your thing in games he played?
Yeah, when games he played. Yeah. And so I guess that's what I'm saying. So unless we're predicting that Joker is somehow out, like in an anomaly year, I think 47 seems pretty hard to grasp unless we're saying that he's not going to be there.
1, I think every season's kind of a little bit different, right? 2, I would kind of point out that last season he played in 69 games. Mm-hmm. And like, this is an interesting question is like, do you think that he plays in more or less games this season?
I think the same.
Well, he had the luxury of playing in less games last year.
Yeah. But I also think that for him, I'll just be honest. I'm very much impacted by the way that he talked in his exit interview with the finals MVP trophy by him. And that's like a lot of emotion exited him at that time. Right. So I'm not like, it's not absolute. I'll be interested to see what he says at media day if he's around, but like he very much said, yeah, I'm going to take more time than usual this summer. I'm
telling you, he's playing in the Olympics next year. I honestly think he looked at it and was like, I'm not going to do this year because I want to do the Olympics, and that's going to be an insane, 25 month stretch that he's going to go through.
Which means all the more reason for him to load manage himself early in the season.
I think there's a real chance of that. I just think there's also a chance that Denver looks good even with him load managing,
and that's why I split the way I do. Where if the Nuggets win 60 games, I'm not going to be like, boy, I never thought that would happen. I'm going to be like, yeah, no, I bet on them being wrong, a bit lower, and that was wrong. But
can I hear Swipe? Give me your breakdown on that. 49, 54, 60.
Oh, man. 49. I'm even looking at the Western Conference right now. I mean, probably 49. I'm probably like 25, 20. I'll say 20 in that.
I think I'm with you. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I think 20, and then probably conservatively, I'll probably put 50 and the 54. Then I'll put, I guess, the rest of the 30. and the high bucket with the 60. So, but even this is what I'm saying, Adam and Matt. So I think there's 11 playoff teams in the Western Conference next year. I think the Pelicans, the Thunder, the Wolves, the Mavericks, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Kings, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Suns, and the Nuggets. So I think that the competition is going to be viable. But I think that's for me is if the Nuggets are forced to play basketball at a high level more than they were last year, especially to end the season, I think that's going to actually play itself out on the court in terms of the win column as well. I think they're going to be forced to play their best in a regular season setting more often than they did last year, which will equate to more wins.
This is the numbers I think are really interesting on this because their expected wins per 82 based off of their point differential, their net rating over cleaning the glass was 50. So they won 3 more games than technically they should have. And that's pretty common. It happens all the time. Like it's just like coin flip games and whatever else. Right. But like,
did that adjusted per March after March and April, didn't it?
For sure. But like, I don't take the difference between us is that I think you're like, well, March is never going to happen again. I'm like, that's who they are. Like the team that they were in January and December is just as much the team that they are as the team that they were in March. They're going to have stretches where they play like both. And that's like who they've been throughout the entirety of my time here under Malone and under Jokic.
Well, they dropped from the number 1 offense to like the number 5 over the course of the last,
and they finished 6th in point differential. So it's like all these metrics kind of indicate that they were not as good as their seeding was last year. And the counter to that from a Nuggets fan is like, seems like they were pretty good considering they won the title. Absolutely. But I'm also very much of the vein, like, I need to be very clear on this. My projection for the regular season also has nothing to do with what I think their chances to win the title are, because I still think this is the best team in the league with the best player. And that if they are a top 4 seed, I will be very confident in their ability to get back to the final.
So I guess for instance, like you have Memphis at number 1. So you're basically based on that, you're saying that like because Memphis has the best half-court defense in basketball, basically outside of the Bucks, at least in the Western Conference, the best half-court defense in the Western Conference. They have an elite transition offense, obviously with Ja, all this other stuff, but Ja's going to be out for 25 games, obviously. So you're saying that based on prototypical standards of what leads to wins in a regular season setting, you feel like Memphis has the best overall team profile to be able to get that job done.
Yeah, especially based off of what I'm projecting for their half-court offense, which has been their Achilles heel. I think they're going to be way better on that this season. So that's and they're not going to be as good as Denver. Again, a lot of this is that, and like this is a good kind of a splitting of the hairs here, Adam, which I think is interesting, which is like I'm talking about what the performance is going to look like, not how good the team's going to be. And if we talk about like how good the Nuggets are going to be, we're all on the same page that when they're locked in and healthy and invested, we're on the same page of how good this team is.
Yeah. The only reason I wouldn't go full, because I would love to just bet against you right here, Matt, and just be like, all right, let's draw a line in the sand. The only reason it's not for any of the things that you pointed out there, because I just think Denver can survive. And I actually think that Jokic, the year where they had Austin Rivers and Facu and winning 48 to me is like all the evidence I need that they could survive injuries. Like they can make it done. The reason that I feel like you could be right, I just have no idea how motivated Jokic is going to be. I have no idea what Jokic we're getting this year. He's the one guy that I look at and I go, again, in my head, he carried the team when Murray was gone. That was pretty exhausting. He goes all the way to the finals last year, took this summer off, and I just think he looks at it and goes, I got to play the Olympics next year. We're probably going deep. I think we're going to go deep the year after that. And I just think he probably looks at this and goes, this is a good 2 years. This is going to be the hardest 2 years of my life, of my professional life. And I got to ease my way into it. And if he does that, then it's just different.
Yeah. All right. That'll wrap it up for this edition of the 3-Man World's Finest. Welcoming in Swipe a Cam. You can follow him on Twitter.
Hold on. The World's Finest is Batman and Superman? So then who is there? Is Swipe of the Joker? Where do you go here?
I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
if I'm the
antagonist, I'll be the Joker. Yes. If we're doing antagonist, I'll be Joker.
There you go. All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great week. We'll be back with 5 shows this week. I'll be with you on Tuesday, probably live show Monday night or Tuesday morning on that one. Adam and Swipe will be with you on Wednesday. Swipe is going to be with you solo on Thursday, and then Swipe and I'll be back with you on Friday. Have yourselves a great week. Let us know what you think of the new edition over on Twitter at Locked On Nuggets. Give us those 5-star reviews. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Smash the like button. We'll see you again on Locked On Nuggets.